Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Hello, and welcome to Occultae Veritatis podcast. I'm Ood Gallifrey, and in studio with me I have...
Sage Murray.
Hulk Hogan!
Oh.
Wow, you clipped there. Leon Filger.
The soundboard demon, I think.
I don't know. The guests are looking at each other weird. I'm Don Kessler. Hi.
LEB.
I thought about calling today's episode Earth's Biggest Natural Explosions, but then I started writing the episode and discovered just how powerful natural explosions are. The least powerful explosion I'm going to be talking about today has the same explosive force as 4 Tsar Bombas. And if you remember back to our nukes episode, the Tsar Bomba is the most powerful nuclear weapon humanity has ever created.
And also the name of my Russian hard bass band.
So this is like explosions number 3 then?
Yeah, first one was non-nuclear.
The
First
second
one
was Richard Bigley's orgasm.
It's true.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to make an orgasm joke.
Yeah, the first iteration of this was non-nuclear explosions. We talked about stuff like the Halifax explosion. Then we talked about nuclear explosions, where Hiroshima is dwarfed by the Tsar Bomba at 50 megatons. And now we're talking about just Earth's largest explosions, period. The biggest explosions that have taken place on planet Earth.
Is this like a thing where they have to like go back and listen to the first 2 episodes and then listen to this one?
They could if they want to see the scale rise, but this could also be listened to as a standalone episode.
But you should still go back and listen to it, because even if you've heard it before, just get that refresher.
We need the clicks, please.
We need the clicks. Just give us some clicks, yeah.
You're part of the cult. Do what we say. Listen to the episodes. You know how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is Earth's biggest explosions. And today we're going to talk about all of the biggest explosions on Earth that make humanity's nuclear weapons look like preschool toys in comparison. But first, we need some poison.
Yes.
So, what's your poison?
Let's explode open these babies.
So, one of the explosions I'm going to be talking about today, no surprise probably, is the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. And it struck the Earth somewhere on the Mexican peninsula.
Too soon, man.
So I got the most Mexican beer I could find. This is Cerveza Pacifico. It's so Mexican that it doesn't even have English on its packaging.
It has French, though.
Yeah.
So this Cerveza Pacifico is, I guess, imported beer, 4.6% alcohol per volume. And apparently in Quebec, it'll get you a 10% refund on this bottle, so...
It's really good.
That smells liquor-y.
It's good.
Cerveza Pacifico Clara, better known as Pacifico, is a Mexican Pilsner-style beer, first brewed in 1900 when 3 Germans opened a brewery in Mazatlan.
God damn it!
It is so named because the Pacifico Brewery is located in the Pacific Ocean port city of Mazatlan.
My goodness.
I will point out is the exact opposite ocean that Chicks Club.
Whoa!
What was that one?
What just happened?
Did you shake yours?
He just busted a nut.
And that is the good beginning to the world's largest explosion.
Hit me in the head.
It hit him in the head.
Fucking hurt, too.
Exactly one casualty.
You know, 3 Germans making this Mexican beer still works for the theme of the episode because the Chicxulub asteroid was imported as well.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
From Germany.
Imported from where?
Space! The final frontier.
On the side of the box, I see this Clara, but when I first saw it, I thought it said cola. So I was very surprised to see, like...
When you tasted it and it was a beer, eh?
Well, when I re-looked at it and I was like, there's alcohol? What?
I don't know. It's kind of like a little sweet, a little bit malty kind of thing.
Yeah,
I rank it 1 out of 1 headshots.
Oh.
Boom, headshot.
BeerAdvocate.com rates it a 65 or poor.
Oh, I kind of like it.
That is out of 2,200 rankings. It has an average of 2.75 out of 5.
Oh,
I might finish the neck on this.
There you go.
Of beers I've been handed while sitting down, it's definitely one of them.
I can't complain. It's an all right beer. It's not offensive. It's, you know, like I said, it's kind of sweet and it's cold and it's refreshing and it's like what, plus 30 out. So
probably plus like 35 in.
It's kind of like sucking back a loaf of bread that has just been slightly undercooked.
Oh, I like that.
Yes.
I would like to read for you the worst review I can find about this beer. Clear light gold appearance with a fairly large white head and modest lacing. Cooked corn aroma that goes downhill as it warms. Not many ways to describe the bland taste other than that I did not have to spit it out. Light-bodied, lively carbonated mouthfeel. Going to try again? Doubtful.
Oh, okay.
1.76 out of 5.
Fairly large white head, laced to perfection.
That's me, all right. To a T.
This one says decent thick head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The story of any volcano begins with magma. Often, this molten rock forms in areas where ocean water is able to slip into the Earth's mantle and lower the layer's melting point. The resulting magma typically remains under the Earth's surface thanks to the delicate balance of 3 geological factors. The first is lithostatic pressure. This is the weight of the Earth's crust pushing down on the magma below. Magma pushes back with the second factor, magmastatic pressure. The battle between these forces strains the third factor, the rock strength of the Earth's crust. Usually, the rock is strong enough and heavy enough to keep the magma in place. But when this equilibrium is thrown off, the consequences can be explosive. One of the most common causes of an eruption is an increase in magmastatic pressure. Magma contains various elements and compounds, many of which are dissolved in the molten rock. At high enough concentrations, compounds like water or sulfur no longer dissolve, and instead form high-pressure gas bubbles. When these bubbles reach the surface, they can burst with the force of a gunshot. And when millions of bubbles explode simultaneously, the energy can send plumes of ash into the stratosphere. But before they pop, they act like bubbles of CO2 in a shaken soda. Their presence lowers the magma's density and increases the buoyant force pushing upward through the crust. Many geologists believe this process was behind the Paracutin eruption in Mexico. There are 2 known natural causes for these buoyant bubbles. Sometimes, new magma from deeper underground brings additional gassy compounds into the mix. But bubbles can also form when magma begins to cool. In its molten state, magma is a mixture of dissolved gases and melted minerals. As the molten rock hardens, some of those minerals solidify into crystals. This process doesn't incorporate many of the dissolved gases, resulting in a higher concentration of the compounds that form explosive bubbles. Not all eruptions are due to rising magmastatic pressure. Sometimes the weight of the rock above can become dangerously low. Landslides can remove massive quantities of rock from atop a magma chamber, dropping the lithostatic pressure and instantly triggering an eruption. This process is known as unloading, and it's been responsible for numerous eruptions, including the sudden explosion of Mount St. Helens in 1980.
this script is broken up into 3 parts. If I were to list just the top 10 biggest explosions, they would all be meteor impacts, but I'm going to split this up so it's a little taste of each level. So I'm going to give you a couple volcanoes, a couple super volcanoes, a couple impacts, and a surprise at the end.
I'll give you a couple impacts and a surprise at the end.
Fuck yes, you will.
Gross.
Yeah.
You're gross.
By the way, I'm not a geologist. I also don't do math. I'm a math atheist, so like some of my calculations may be off here. I'm atheist.
Matheist.
Yeah, so keep that in mind while you listen to my my rendition. So the surface of the Earth, including all the continents and the ocean, are built upon something called the crust. The crust is a broken puzzle of solid rock plates, each rock plate being about 40 kilometers thick.
Like my heart.
Oh boy. And they float upon a vast sea of molten rock called the mantle. This molten sea of rock is 3,000 kilometers deep, and it's always churning. Near the Earth's core, there's a bunch of radioactive elements that are decaying, producing massive amounts of heat, and that makes this liquid rock in the mantle heat up and rise 3,000 kilometers up and rub against the bottom of these plates, shoving them all over the place and exerting just trillions of pounds of pressure.
Speaking of the mantle, I believe in something like 99 billion years, or maybe it was like 50 billion years or something like that.
Yeah.
But apparently it's going to solidify and just become a solid rock once all that energy dissipates. But the fun part about that is that way, way, way before that happens, the sun is going to go into red giant and then eventually supernova. So it technically will never happen because Earth will be destroyed.
It can't do that fast enough.
Unless we activate infinite improbability drive, in which case we could end up well outside the line of fire, but we may or may not be a teapot.
I was a bowl of petunias.
Yeah.
I was a sperm whale.
Yeah, like the fire or the forge at the center of the Earth is all those radioactive elements decaying. And there's going to be a certain point in the future, a tipping point, where there's not going to be enough radioactive elements left to decay that will keep the mantle liquid, so it'll solidify. But for now, we're a bunch of plates floating on the magma, and that causes a bunch of problems. Because all these plates start to smash together. It's like playing bumper cars with slabs of rock, 72 million square kilometers in size. And when they smash together, they deform at the edges. And some of these deformities, some of these cracks that form allow magma to seep to the surface and make a volcano.
All the heat surges to the surface.
Liquid hot magma.
Magma.
Yeah. Some volcanoes, like the Hawaiian chain of volcanoes, release this pressure coming from below in a measured way. There's minimal actual explosions. There's just a lot of spots where lava is slowly leaking out of the earth, like a cracked glass bottle. Just a gentle babbling brook of molten rock. Some volcanoes aren't so lucky, or are more lucky, depending how you look at it. The geology of the rock containing the magma chamber will keep filling up with more and more magma, the pressure being sealed and unable to release. And over millions and millions of years, more and more magma will force itself into this chamber, causing it to deform and swell. This is like filling a balloon at a sink. Eventually...
Or edging.
Oh yeah, or edging. Eventually there will be a final explosion. Just like edging, yeah. If you're filling a balloon at a sink, it's a layer of rubber a couple millimeters thick, but when a volcano explodes, it's smashing through rock above it. Those are the volcanic eruptions we're going to be talking about today, the ones where the pressure is contained and it's all released in one cataclysmic explosion. This is the bottom of the list, number 8, Earth's biggest explosions, and it's probably the most well-known, Krakatoa. It's known as the first modern disaster, because in the late 1800s, underground telegraph lines had finally been laid across ocean floors connecting all the major countries. So when Krakatoa finally went off, the whole world was gossiping about it.
So it was like when something happens and then like all these people go on into Twitter and they make their like jokes and whatever. It's kind of the same deal with Krakatoa. They were just, except it's like on the Telegraph. Eh?
Yeah, Telegraph was the Twitter of the time, and
Stop
everybody was
letting
on
off fireworks. I'm trying to sleep. Stop.
Yeah, precisely.
Did it kill any billionaires? End message.
It actually may have killed a couple billionaires at the time. Spoiler.
Hell yeah.
So Krakatoa was originally part of a 3-peak Indonesian mountain range, kind of a mini mountain range, that reached from the island of Java to the island of Sumatra in Indonesia. But by the time the eruption ended, very little of that landmass of the 3 peaks would remain above the water. It started with a faint rumbling sometime in June 1883, followed by plumes of smoke rising out of the 3 volcano peaks over the next 2 months. This became a tourist attraction. Ships would go off-route to drive by the volcano. Rich tourists would plan vacations around the volcano to observe it letting out its smoke. And people in Java and Sumatra held festivals celebrating the reawakening of a dead mountain.
That's fun.
This sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah. Like, we all know what happened to Krakatoa. So, it might be a bad idea. At 10 a.m., August 27th, 1883, the 2,000-foot-tall Krakatoa detonated like a bomb. Its central chamber of magma had been slowly filling with superheated gases for 3 million years. It built up so much pressure that when it finally was released in an eruption, it detonated like a bomb. This is why I said this episode can be called the Earth's Biggest Explosions. I don't have to call it Earth's Biggest Natural Explosions. Because this had the same energy as 4 Tsar Bombas being detonated at once. The biggest bombs humanity can create, this one volcano was the strength of 4 of them. Thousands were caught in the initial explosion and pressure wave, including all the rich people vacationing, including researchers set up on the shore to study the volcano. Krakatoa's sound wave was estimated to be 194 decibels. At this volume, sound waves can liquefy organs and strip flesh from bodies. The pressure wave inside of the 100-kilometer area were not only fatally loud, but carried superheated rock, magma, and ash. Java and Sumatra were both surrounding the eruption. They were 2 land masses that surrounded this island, and they were well within this 100-kilometer limit, so a bunch of the shoreside towns became hellscapes of fire, ash, and bodies. The sound of Krakatoa exploding traveled around the globe 4 times before the energy dissipated, and people around the world recorded themselves hearing the sound of Krakatoa. People 5,000 kilometers away in India described a window-shaking gunshot-like sound that repeated every few hours. People 8,000 kilometers away in Egypt described the sound of a nearby slamming door every few hours. And people 10,000 kilometers away in Germany described what they said was like a nearby crash that repeated every few hours. This was the sound wave of Krakatoa circling the Earth over and over again. Black smoke started bellowing from Krakatoa, and a common phenomenon began: volcanic lightning. Billions of fragments of minerals are rising in the plume of a volcano and rubbing together. This generates static electricity, and by the time the volcanic plume reaches the upper atmosphere, it allows a convenient place for electrical discharge to happen. So within the plumes of volcanoes, there lightning strikes happening hundreds of times per hour are very, very common. And that was happening everywhere where the plume of Krakatoa's smoke reached. So you were subject to a pressure wave, then a heat wave, then a cloud of pyroclastic ash that was also electrified and generating lightning bolts. Everything within a few hundred kilometers was decimated, and the biggest killer, tsunamis, waves 90 feet high, would be hitting coasts for hundreds of miles around in Indonesia, Brunei, Singapore, Malaysia, and Australia. These waves would sweep up to 10 miles inland, destroying settlements and drowning thousands. When all was said and done, Krakatoa had killed an estimated 30,000 people. And that is the bottom of our list.
Fun fact, Edvard Munch's Scream, which has the dude with the face and the bright red sky, might have been inspired by Krakatoa having covered the sky in red ash, causing him to, go a little crazy because Edvard Munch.
Oh, right.
If you look at that picture, it looks like a puppy dog with cute ears.
Yeah.
Then you can never unsee it.
Yeah, it's true. Why?
Yeah. Go show me. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Edvard Munch's The Scream?
Yeah.
Oh, the Scream.
Oh, the Scream.
Oh,
yeah.
I see what you mean.
See, it looks like a puppy.
Yeah, I see the puppy.
Oh, it does. You can never unsee it now. The Scream has lost its horror. It's a poopy. Number 7 on our list. So this is another mountain. Krakatoa was the explosive equivalent of 4 Tsar Bombas. Mount Tambora was the equivalent of 16 Tsar Bombas. The 1815 Mount Tambora eruption was 4 times bigger than Krakatoa, but it occurred before telegraphs allowed global communication, so records of this eruption weren't as well kept.
It was a huge explosion. It changed the climate around the world for a couple of years in 1816. So yeah, we were pretty excited to actually go to the summit and go into what's known as the caldera, which is a descent into the bottom of the crater itself. It's 6 kilometers in diameter, and I believe at the highest point it's about 1.3 kilometers deep. It's unreal. It's fantastic. It's huge. It's massive. And there's continuous landslides. Massive boulders are just running down the side of the mountain, dust coming up. You can literally hear it. As the sun comes up, it's stunning. And the sun, once it gets up, it starts to reveal more and more components of the volcano itself. Getting to the summit itself, we trekked for one day, camped one night, and then the real journey begins, and that's the actual descent. And you're looking down and you're thinking, my God, how are we ever going to get down there? It looks like 90-degree drops. And we get the ropes out. There's no safety, there's no helmets, there's potential rock slides. We've got nylon rope they put down for you, which you literally have to go hand over hand. There's no harnesses. And if you're injured, if you sprain your ankle, you break a leg, or worse, you're not going to be out of there for another 3 days. The only way out of there is a helicopter. It's like a lunar landscape. When you get down there, there's gas coming out of the side of the mountain, there's white rocks, there's massive gouges in the bottom from the floodwaters, there's boulders everywhere, and it's hot. It's pretty severe down there. But luckily, there's this amazing full moon. Amazing. It's a cloudless sky, beautiful light, the light's above us, and it's perfect photography. It looks like day almost. It's unreal. The clarity's there, there's no dust, the wind's gone, just this beautiful, pure light. I thought I got some quite nice shots.
Krakatoa was as strong as 4 Tsar Bombas. Mount Tambora, which erupted in 1815, was as strong as 16 Tsar Bombas.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It isn't as famous as Krakatoa because in 1815 the telegram lines weren't up yet, so people weren't gossiping about it when it went off. But that didn't stop people of the day in their local places from talking about it. And I think the best way that this is displayed is through Lord Byron. Lord Byron was an 1800s poet. He is mostly known for his romantic poems. However,
he's a thirsty bitch.
Oh, he is.
Thirsty.
However, him living through the worldwide effects of the Tambora eruption inspired him to write an apocalyptic poem titled Darkness.
His name was George Gordon.
Yeah. Who would like to read Darkness by Lord Byron? And that down, it's the yellow highlighted stuff.
I had a dream, which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished, and the stars did wander darkling in the eternal space. Rayless and pathless, and the icy earth swung blind and blackening in the moonless air. The palaces of crowned kings, the huts, the habitations of all things which dwell, were burnt for beacons, cities were consumed, and men were gathered round their blazing homes to look once more into each other's face. Happy were those who dwelt within the eye of the volcanoes, and their mountain torch, a fearful hope, was all the world contained. Forests were set on fire, but hour by hour they fell and faded, and the crackling trunks extinguished with a crash, and all was black.
Ooh, spoopy.
Oh, yeah. After hundreds of years of dormancy, the 14,000-foot-tall volcano's magma chamber was nearing its maximum capacity, with trillions of pounds of pressure being pressed into it from the mantle below. In 1812, the volcano became active again. Small earthquakes struck the Indonesian island of Sumbawa, where the volcano sat upon. For the next 3 years, small eruptions and minor lava leaks became commonplace. A nuisance to be sure, but the activity was Hawaii-like. Then, 3 years later, on April 4th, 1815, 6 days of much more violent eruptions occurred, as pieces of the mountain were snapping like buttons off a fat man's jacket. On the morning of April 10th, the mountain reached a breaking point, and all the buttons on the shirt popped at once.
Is it a jacket or a shirt?
It's both. It's one of those custom...
It's a shacket. I have a shacket.
A jerk!
With like zip-in lining when it gets cold. It's amazing.
And buttons.
Either
and
way,
zipper?
yeah, zipper popped, the buttons popped, the whole jacket popped apart.
If you want this piece of merch, you can't find it at
No, it's literally an impossible piece of garment, but like you can...
The impossible garment.
Yeah. So the entire top half of the mountain exploded with the force of 16 Tsar Bombas. When I said the entire top half, I mean it. The mountain started at 14,000 feet tall. After the eruption, the mountain was only 9,000 feet high. This means that an area of stone, 5,000 feet tall and 30 kilometers in diameter, was pulverized and thrown by the explosion. This is about 900 billion tons worth of stone.
Wow.
Yep. This released an immense amount of energy. An area of 90 square kilometers surrounding Tambora was heated up to 1,300 degrees Celsius. The instant death toll of the climatic explosion was an estimated 10,000 people. A tidal wave 150 feet high, moving at the speed of sound, hit surrounding shores for hundreds of kilometers. The tidal waves killed another 6,000 people just hours after erupting. 1,300 kilometers away, there was a large detachment of British troops having their morning tea and beans. I don't know what you eat in the morning. They heard the explosion of the volcano so clearly that they immediately mobilized all their troops searching for its source. They didn't think it was a volcano. They thought somebody in a nearby hidden place was firing a cannon at them, and they spent all morning desperately searching for the source of the cannon. But then, summer never came. The volcano exploded in 1815, and 1816 was known as the year without a summer. The ash cloud of Tambora caused a worldwide dimming effect. Everything became as dark as dusk during the bright of day. The eruption also forced negatively charged ash particles all the way up to the positively charged ionosphere, basically temporarily weakening the Earth's protective electrical shield. This allowed a highly drastic increase in the amount of ultraviolet radiation hitting the Earth's surface. Not only does this cause cancer in living things and radiation burns, but the ultraviolet radiation also caused clouds to form less often. And with the reduction in rain clouds, plants withered. Herd animals were either starved or butchered in the crisis, and with an increase in animal and human death and decay from the rotting corpses brought pathogens into people's already starvation-weakened bodies. It took 20 months for the skies to fully brighten after Tambora erupted, but the damage was done. Including the instant deaths from the volcano's eruption and the deaths resulting from the after effects, an estimated 1 million people worldwide died as a result of the Tambora eruption. At around the time of its eruption in 1815, the world population was about 1 billion, so Tambora killed 1 of every 1,000 people on Earth.
And, like, this can happen again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At any moment. And there ain't nothing any of us can do about it, you know?
It feels kind of like inspiration for Game of Thrones.
You know, you're just kind of... you just hope it doesn't happen.
Mhm.
And if
Cross
it does
fingers.
happen, you hope you're minimally affected, but it could happen anywhere
Keeps you up at night.
at
kinda.
any point. Yeah.
And you think you're safe? Oh, I'm in the middle of a tectonic plate. I have examples that form in the middle of a tectonic plate.
Oh, good.
And there's other effects that can just happen wherever you are on Earth. And there's events so big that no matter where you hide, you're going to be affected. We're going to learn about those later.
Did you know a single volcano once changed global weather patterns, altered the history of entire continents, and indirectly inspired some of the most iconic works of art in history? In April of 1815, Mount Tambora erupted on the island of Sumbawa. The particles ejected by Tambora's eruption had reverberations far from Indonesia's shores, altering global weather patterns and ushering in what we call today the year without a summer. Temperatures on planet Earth dropped roughly 3 degrees Celsius, leading to a dark, volcanic winter around the globe. The burgeoning new nation known as the United States wasn't spared, as Tambora's eruption triggered the first economic depression in US history after decimating the survival rate of both crops and livestock. Elsewhere in the world, China's Yunnan province faced a 3-year famine after its monsoon season was completely derailed, forcing farmers to abandon their rice farms and turn to poppies for income. This trickle effect inadvertently fueled the expansion of opiate production in China, and what would eventually become the Opium Wars decades later. Cholera outbreaks already sweeping India, mutated and ravaged populations weakened by famine, claiming countless lives across Asia and eventually Europe. Simultaneously, a potato shortage in Ireland left the malnourished population ill-prepared to battle a typhus epidemic, and later spread across shores to England. But Tambora's eruption wasn't just a calamity that altered the lives of countless people, it also played an indelible role in shaping the arts worldwide. The atmospheric effects in particular kept Europeans inside, stirring the creative minds of countless artists, including the young Mary Shelley. In the damp, cold summer of 1818, Shelley penned Frankenstein, the iconic monster story that would go on to become one of the most culturally significant writings in history. The red, ash-darkened sky, too, became a common trope in many visual art pieces.
For several years on planet Earth, the sun never properly shone because it was being filtered through this volcanic aerosol veil. The sun was dim, weak, watery. So, imagine how demoralizing the effect of that would be. It seems like a kind of divine judgment on humanity, and certainly it was interpreted that way by people and cultures across the globe.
Among them, German artist Caspar David Friedrich, who quite literally painted the picture of what the post-eruption world looked like in Woman Before the Rising Sun, which was crafted in the midst of the fallout. With roughly 20 active caldera volcanoes, often referred to as supervolcanoes, the eruption of Mount Tambora begs the question, could history repeat itself in our lifetime?
So that was number 7 on the list. So again, we're going up in severity. Krakatoa is the biggest explosion in modern history. Mount Thera is the biggest volcanic eruption in recorded history, while human beings have been writing things down. Tambora was 16 Tsar Bombas big. Mount Thera was 40 Tsar Bombas big. So this takes place 1600 BC. This is near the end of the Bronze Age. On the modern Greek island of Santorini lived a powerful civilization of seafaring people known as the Minoans. The Minoans predated the Greeks. The Minoans had running water, flushing toilets, underground sewer lines, and gigantic palaces that would make the Romans jealous.
And a huge boob.
Oh yeah, there were plenty of huge boobs. Wait, is that referencing something?
That's referencing that picture.
Oh yes. We're looking at the site of the volcano before and after the eruption. And it does look like a giant boob, including nipple.
It does.
Yeah. The Thera volcano erupted with so much force that the entire mountain was blown away, like dust in the wind. The explosive force of its eruption was equal to 40 Tsar Bombas. It blew fragments of rock as big as a house, so imagine a fragment of rock as big as the house we're sitting in, up to 400 kilometers away, landing across the Mediterranean Sea in Greece and modern-day Turkey. Everything within 200 kilometers would be subject to that flesh-tearing 194 decibels of sound and superheated plasma, along with being pummeled by thousands of small stones being thrown faster than the speed of sound.
How long would that last?
That-
Like, is it kind of like when like a submarine implodes and it's instantaneous for all intents and purposes, or is there actually time to process and realize just how fucked you're about to be?
It depends on what wave of destruction you're caught in. Like the immediate pressure wave, it would be almost instant death. The pyroclastic ash cloud, that slowly creeps in. It takes a few hours to get to you. And the blotting out of the sun takes days and weeks afterwards. So you're either instantly killed by the effects, or all the creeping little after effects kill you.
Depends on your distance.
Yeah.
As well as probably whatever, if you are in some form of shelter or not, and what that shelter is.
I'm not sure if that shelter helps too much when there's a piece of rock the
No,
size of a
but
house
it might
size of your shelter.
it might delay it by like half a second, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Hey, wait, where's my roof? Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no.
What?
And Santorini was like a big part of the Minoan Empire. It was like it was like the New York of its day. It was just like a populous, successful island, but it was built right beside a fucking volcano, and pretty much the whole island was sandblasted with plasma down to its core. The tidal wave that was generated by this explosion was large enough to sweep all over all the small islands in a 500-mile radius, with waves up to 300 feet high, traveling 400 kilometers an hour. This wouldn't be like a tsunami floating like partially into an island. This would be a tsunami just going right over top of the islands and submerging them for a time. A several-foot-thick layer of superheated ash covered the landscape for hundreds of miles, incinerating millions of plants and animals. The world was shaded in ash as the pyroclastic cloud reached the upper atmosphere. The sun disappeared for months. This caused a global cooling event. In the time, Egyptian farmers wrote of their crops withering as soon as the smoke choked out the sky. Ancient Chinese scholars spoke of the cold snap that captured the entire country, and tens of thousands all across Europe starved to death. As for the Minoans, they would survive Mount Thera, but as a shadow of their former selves, and this paved the way for the Greeks to take over.
The residents of Santorini are well aware of the volcano today. This rare landscape, encompassing the remains of an ancient oceanic island, is one of Europe's most popular vacation destinations. But this picture postcard of cruise ships and tranquil lagoons belies a geological drama that still seethes beneath the Earth's surface. The Minoan people lived in one of the most advanced and innovative civilizations of their era. But for all of their refinement and modernity, the Minoans inhabiting these islands could never have imagined or prepared for the cataclysm awaiting their society.
There was no way in my mind that the Minoans knew they were living on a volcano, much less what a volcano was. There are no other eruptions in this area for hundreds, if not thousands of years while they lived here.
The annihilation of the Minoan culture was so fantastically catastrophic that the event may have planted the seed for one of history's most enduring myths. In his famous dialogues, Plato tells of a utopian society living on an oceanic island he calls Atlantis. In a single day and night of misfortune, the island vanishes under the sea. Sunk by angry gods, the culture disappears forever without a trace.
Although there are no clear records of the eruption, its plume may have been described in the Egyptian tempest Stel, while the ensuing volcanic winter coincides with a cold snap described in the Chinese bamboo annals. Adding to the historic significance of the eruption, geologist Barbara J. Sivertson has further sought to establish a link between the Minoan eruption and the biblical exodus of the Israelites from Egypt. When the main volcanic eruption finally occurred, it hurled ash and magma 20 miles high into the stratosphere, at the same time creating a tsunami with an estimated wave height of 115 to 492 feet, which decimated the northern coastline of Crete. The dramatic western coastline of Santorini was created when the island split in two during the primary blast. Greek folklore has perpetuated the story that the Minoans living on Thera departed the island in a flotilla of ocean-going vessels when the frequency of earthquakes began to intensify, making their way to nearby Crete before celebrating their salvation by the time the main eruption finally occurred. Sadly, however, none of the celebrants possessed knowledge of the association of earthquakes and tsunamis, and when the wave crashed ashore on the northern coast of Crete, all the survivors were drowned in a watery death before their bodies were washed out to sea.
Mount Thera destroyed an entire culture. What could possibly be bigger than that at number 5? How about a supervolcano, not just a volcano, but a supervolcano that nearly destroyed an entire species? Our species.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. The number 5, Toba eruption. It is equivalent to 10,000 Tsar Bombas.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, 10,000. It's a huge jump up.
Yeah,
from
no
40.
kidding.
That's what puts the super and super volcanoes. There's a formation in Indonesia known as Toba Lake. It's a big lake that's 100 kilometers long and 35 kilometers wide. That entire lake is the caldera of the volcano. That was the epicenter of the explosion 75,000 years ago.
It looks like a white blood cell.
Yeah. Toba Tuf was not a volcano. It was a super volcano. Their classification is based on how significantly they can change and reshape the Earth and how powerfully they explode when they erupt. Toba is one of the biggest volcanoes on Earth. The average diameter for a volcano on Earth is about 5 kilometers by 5 kilometers. As I said before, Toba was 100 kilometers long by 35 kilometers wide. Toba is again in Indonesia. 3 entries on this list have already come from Indonesia. The amount of explosive energy coming from a supervolcano erupting rises exponentially. The biggest volcanic eruption in recorded history, which destroyed the Minoans, exploded with the energy of 4 Tsar Bombas. The Toba Tuf supervolcano erupted with the energy of 10,000 Tsar Bombas. So let's see what it was like at the time. It was 74,000 years ago. Human beings, nearly genetically identical to you and me, Homo sapiens sapiens, who had language, basic religion, clothes, shelter, stone tools, funerals, arts, hopes, and dreams, were thriving. At the time, our population on Earth was about 2 million humans, all still in Africa. After the eruption of Toba, that 2 million population was cut down to about 2,000 humans.
Wow.
Yep. Just to give you an idea of how long this lasts and what kind of the releases of these energies are, this eruption lasted for around 15 hours total, with constant explosive energy being expended as new pieces of rock detonated around the mountain. The entire eruption's energy equivalent was equivalent to detonating a Tsar Bomba every 5 seconds for 15 hours. Mount St. Helens ejected 1.4 billion cubic meters of ash during its entire eruption. Toba was putting out this volume of ash every 0.7 seconds of its 15-hour eruption.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if the radiation changed any human DNA.
Oh, it could have. Yeah, because just like the past volcano, this would shut down the ionosphere for a time. A lot more ultraviolet light would come in, and there would be an increase in mutations, cancers, radiation burns, and everything. And it'd be even more amplified than volcanoes previous. Everything within 200 kilometers of Toba was buried in pyroclastic ash, about 2,500 deep or more, literally buried under a mountain of ash. The ash traveled far. The volcano was in Indonesia, but ash rained for days on places as far away as Madagascar, Somalia, New Zealand, and Iran. And boulders ejected from Toba have been found as far as 1,000 kilometers away. So imagine another house-sized boulder like this being tossed 1,000 kilometers away by the force of the eruption. There was enough ash in the air to change the weather for the next 1,000 years, but the immediate effect following the eruption was about 10 years of near-total darkness. Plants that survived this period were either hardy enough to survive the decade of withering and darkness, or had laid seeds that would sprout after the darkness left. In the 10 years, the planet was trapped in a permanent winter, causing a total collapse of weather systems and animal cycles. Most humans, 1.99 million of us, starved to death, unable to adapt. Afterwards, 2,000 humans survived, the 0.8%. We went from living in tribes of 50 to 100 individuals and fighting for space, to living in a few small family groups of around 5 individuals.
In order for it to form an ice age, it would have to cool the Earth for a long period of time. So we were trying to figure out how could Toba have caused the Earth to cool for a long period of time. No matter how much it puts in the atmosphere, it's still going to fall out because of gravity. We can get a volcanic winter, we can make it very cold and very hard to live for several years, up to 10 years, but then it gradually starts to warm up again.
What Roebuck's models reveal is that this cooling effect from Toba's sulfur gases could not have lasted forever. After Toba's volcanic winter, the planet should have warmed up, and temperatures should have returned to normal. But geological records show that the Earth stays cold for another 1,000 years. This leads Roebuck to believe that Toba erupts at a time when an ice age is already on its way.
It could have brought it on a little bit faster. We know that ice ages occur without volcanic eruptions. We know that this large eruption occurred just before an ice advance.
I believe what may have happened is that as the overall climate of the Earth was starting to shift into one of these 1,000-year periods of cooling, Toba erupted. And I think those volcanic aerosols helped to cool sea surface temperatures. And what it did, it looks like it may have really enhanced that initial couple hundred years of cooling.
Although Toba may not have been the trigger for a 1,000-year ice age, its aftermath could be responsible for something far more devastating: the near extinction of humanity. The storm that ravages the planet after the eruption of the supervolcano Toba is unlike anything the world has ever seen. It sets off a volcanic winter that causes temperatures to plummet by as much as 25 degrees and cripples the food chain. Plants and animals struggle to adapt to the frigid conditions. But it's early humans who face the greatest threat of all, the threat of extinction.
Imagine you're sitting in front of your cave, and all of a sudden in the distance, the sky starts getting dark and the sun gets blocked out and it starts getting colder and colder, and you say, what have I done to annoy the gods? What's happening?
People at this time really were suffering some serious climatic change, really cold conditions, unlike anything that they had experienced.
For a person living after this eruption, really only the strong would have survived.
As this cooling occurred, you can imagine populations would start to crash. We're talking about generations being decimated.
Toba nearly killed humans, period. But number 4 was 6 times larger than Toba. Toba was 10,000 Tsar Bombas big. The La Garita caldera in Colorado was 60,000 Tsar Bombas big. Now, when you talk about the American supervolcano, Yellowstone gets all the hype. That's the one that everybody knows. But the largest explosion, the largest eruption that Yellowstone ever had, was just a measly 9,000 Tsar Bombas big. Now, the king of the American supervolcanoes is La Garita in Colorado, whose biggest explosion was 60,000 Tsar Bombas. At one time, 27 million years ago, it erupted. This story starts about 40 million years ago, however, where the North American tectonic plate started riding over top of its neighbor, the Farallon Plate, and the impact produced the Rocky Mountains. It was stable for about 10 million years when suddenly, in geological terms, the bottom part of the Farallon Plate in the mantle began to deform and dip into the mantle and melt, exposing the weak underbelly of the North American plate. This forced millions of square kilometers of molten rock into every available crack in the North American plate. One of those cracks leading beneath a newly birthed La Garita supervolcano. Over only a few million years, the belly of that volcano swelled and distended. stretching to contain over 3,000 square kilometers of molten rock and superheated gas. Let's say you were in Utah, standing next door to Colorado, and this thing went off. When this volcano exploded, you would suddenly see, from Utah, giant clouds of pyroclastic ash that are 1,500 degrees Celsius. These clouds would be a kilometer high, like giant dust storms racing towards you at 400 kilometers an hour. The cloud has enough kinetic force behind it to travel up mountains, into deep caves, and into every hiding space for hundreds of kilometers, meaning you can't hide from it. And everything within thousands of kilometers is covered with several inches of ash.
When did this happen?
This happened 27 million years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and this caused, the death of a whole bunch of megafauna. Everything within 1,000 kilometers was not only covered in, several feet of ash, or sometimes as much as a kilometer of ash, but gigantic lakes of lava flowed from the supervolcano during its biggest eruption, covering most of North America in over 5,000 cubic kilometers of magma. Flowed is also probably the wrong term. This is like placing several hundred strong rubber bands around a 2-liter pop bottle and then taking the lid off. It didn't flow from this volcano. It was a super soaker of lava with a jet bigger than the Amazon River, spewing from the earth like it was stabbed in the femoral artery, to cover most of North America with lava. This is the single largest eruption event in history, the La Caldera eruption. There are eruptions bigger than this, but most of them aren't single events. They're single eruptions or didn't have proper evidence.
A very juicy pussy.
Yeah, these guys squirt all over the place.
I'm so glad somebody said it.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, there are eruptions bigger than the La Caldera, but those are like seepers, those are leakers, where they leak more lava over time. So this is an explosions episode. I don't want a volcano to leak over 1 million years and get the top spot. I don't want it to be calm and nice. I want it to be explosive.
Really looking forward to the leakers list next time.
Yeah. Sign up next time for the leakers list of volcanoes.
Patreon special.
Oh yeah. Now, what are bigger than volcanic supervolcanoes? Impact explosions. People often underestimate gravity because it's the weakest force. A tiny magnet can lift up something when it's fighting against the gravity of the entire planet Earth. But you can't argue with the laws of physics and just how much energy can be made by taking something heavy and throwing it really, really hard at something else. This is why the top 3 explosions on this list are all impact explosions. Heavy-ass rocks from space hitting the Earth really, really hard. And of course, the first one I'm going to be talking about on this list, this is where the numbers get fucking ridiculous. The La Caldera eruption was 60,000 Tsar Bombas. The Chicxulub asteroid, the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, impacted with a force of 2 million Tsar Bombas.
That's too many Tsar Bombas.
Oh, you wait.
What's a Tsar Bomba level? It's over 9,000!
Yeah.
Old meme for anybody listening.
It's over 2 million.
It's an old meme, sir, but it checks out.
So the theory of an asteroid killing the dinosaurs was laughed at in early science. There was some evidence of an impact, but the geologists often had the same criticism. You couldn't hide a crater that size. But in the 1990s, several discoveries were made that supported the impact theory. Eventually, it was discovered that a perfect half circle of cenotes, blue water swimming holes, cut into the Yucatan Peninsula. These cenotes were formed when a massive impact deformed the crust of the Earth itself. And you can see these cenotes in, tourist pamphlets, where they're big water holes where you can go swimming in, but really those are cracks in the Earth that formed around the edge of the impact crater when that heavy-ass rock hit the Earth really, really hard.
Mr. Sage Murray and I went swimming in a cenote on our honeymoon.
Yeah. Further radar imaging past this half circle on the land showed that this half circle continued into the sea. And suddenly it had been discovered, the impact crater for the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, 180 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers deep, half on the land of the Yucatan Peninsula and half in the water. And it was named after the Mexican town it was discovered near, Chicxulub. The dinosaur-killing asteroid was discovered, or more accurately, the killer of all non-avian dinosaurs was discovered, as it's often forgotten that avian dinosaurs survived to evolve into modern-day birds. But enough semantics. Let's talk about the day in question. 65 million years ago, in the last days of the late Cretaceous, a lot of dinosaurs that you are familiar with are thriving. Tyrannosaurus, Velociraptor, Triceratops, Ankylosaurus, Spinosaurus. Then, just as a herd of hadrosaurs were having a cool drink from a still lake, Chicxulub entered the Earth's atmosphere. It was 10 kilometers across, and weighed about 2 trillion tons. You wouldn't have much time to observe it as it streaked through the atmosphere, however, as it hit the Earth traveling 40 times the speed of sound, or about 50,000 kilometers per hour. Before it even hit the planet, the brightness of it entering the atmosphere would instantly blind any creature looking in its direction. Then, it hit the Earth, making contact in the Gulf of Mexico. The energy unleashed in its explosive impact with the Earth was equivalent to 2 million Tsar Bombas, or 100 trillion tons of TNT. An immediate air blast pressure wave was unleashed, powerful enough to tear apart solid granite, traveling at 700 kilometers an hour, flattening and shredding everything within 3,000 kilometers of the impact. Dinosaurs that weighed up to 100 tons, were thrown like leaves in the wind. Trees were reduced to splinters and landscapes were sandblasted flat. All the stone and rock that was within the impact crater was thrown high into space and began orbiting the Earth. A gigantic pulse of heat elevated the temperature to thousands of degrees for hundreds of miles, and everything within 1,500 kilometers instantly started burning, leading to continent-sized wildfires. If you were to look at a modern map, the entirety of Central America was molten rock, and North America and South America weren't faring much better, becoming continent-wide blazes of wildfire. The pressure from the impact would send a tidal wave 1,000 feet high racing across the ocean, hitting the coasts of Paleolithic, South America, North America, Africa, and Europe, covering everything for hundreds of miles inland in salt water 100 feet or more deep, drowning most things living anywhere near a coastline.
Interesting thing about the tsunamis, that part of the world has a fairly shallow ocean. If it had landed somewhere like the Pacific where it was very, very deep, those could have been upwards of 4.6 kilometers tall instead of 300 meters or 300 feet or something like that.
The demon's exactly right, and you get some trade-offs with that. If it were to hit the deeper ocean, it would expel more of its energy into the water, which create bigger tidal waves, which would drown and go far more inland. But it hitting in the shallow Gulf of Mexico and it hitting the bottom of the ocean really hard, instead that energy was expelled into the mantle. So, starting from a few minutes to a few hours after the meteor impacted the Earth, nearly all of the active volcanoes on Earth started erupting, because the energy of the asteroid had dissipated through the Earth.
Earth game.
Yeah.
Bury that.
Big push, Earth game.
Yeah, and speaking of that tidal wave a kilometer high, it also devastated everything below the water. Putting enough energy into water to make a wave that big will shred anything inside that water. It's like having a giant firecracker that makes a pressure wave through the entire ocean. So anything with soft bodies in the ocean would get shredded, and anything substantially bigger, like big marine reptiles, their organs would be liquefied.
It's like the opposite of what happens when you take a tin can to the Titanic.
Exactly.
It's like coming in a bowl of soup.
How is it like that?
What?
I think we need to elaborate on this one.
More.
Displacement.
You know, cream of broccoli and all that. Millions of boulders the size of skyscrapers travel as far as 3,000 kilometers away, causing secondary impacts in North and South America. At this point, about 10 minutes after the impact, an eerie calm would occur. If you're in North or South America, you're probably dead. But for the rest of the world, you've just been hit with a few 1,000-foot-tall waves, no big deal. But after waiting about 30 minutes, you would watch the sky get slowly darker and things for you would get worse. Yes, worse. the ejecta clouds would start to arrive. The ejecta cloud is made of all the pulverized rock from the meteor itself and the Earth after the impact, and it formed an ever-expanding death cloud that would eventually encircle the entire Earth. It behaved a lot like a gigantic version of a volcano's ash plume. If you've ever seen pictures or videos of those massive 300-foot dust storms in deserts, this is like the volcanic version of that, except all over the surface of the Earth. Also, this cloud is generating static electricity, just like in volcanoes, so it would also be electrified. And so, a cloud of superheated, electrified, poisonous gas, 1,000 feet tall, moving at 700 kilometers an hour, would slowly spread along the Earth. From the impact crater, that cloud of ejecta would reach California in 8 hours. It would reach Canada in 11 hours. It would reach France in 13 hours. And in 17 hours, it would encircle the entire Earth, baking it in electrified, superheated ash.
But the birds are fine.
Well, the things that survived are things that were able to find deep enough caves or places that were far enough away to hide that they were able to ride this out. But it's surprising that anything at all was able to ride this out.
There just happened to be a couple of places where they had naturally hidden themselves.
Oh yeah, mammals survive this just fine.
Yeah.
For that.
So there are thousands and thousands of species of all different sorts of animals.
Yeah.
It is estimated that there may have been as few as 5 major bird lineages that survived KPG.
Yeah.
5. That means all birds on Earth now are descended from possibly 5 different, well, maybe not pairs, but lineages, right? So it could be 5 different species of birds survived KPG and then turned into every other bird. They're talking about 4 or 5 different types of lizards survived the KPG.
Yeah.
5 sets of turtles survived.
Yeah.
We are talking single-digit numbers of species after.
Yeah.
How did the penguins do?
They evolved from a small avian dinosaur that was able to hide and survive.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the oceans were much more warm after this thing happened,
Right.
so they had no problem.
Yeah, in fact, almost universally, any creature that was above 10 pounds in weight went extinct. Almost universally. Which means that if you see an animal today that weighs more than 10 pounds, dogs, elephants, whales, all of them evolved from creatures that were under 10 pounds that survived this explosion. So, we are the descendants of all the tinies, pretty much.
My shitty dog Zelda would have survived. She's 9 pounds.
Yeah. And it's just that when you're, when you double in size, your mass goes up exponentially. So you don't double in mass, your mass rises much more quickly. So the bigger you are, the more calories you have to eat exponentially. So that's why small creatures were able to survive. They were able to, for the thousands of years it would take to recover from this, able to eke out an existence on their tiny amount of calories that they were able to have. Also, the nightmare isn't over. After the ejecta cloud circles the entire Earth and bakes it in electrified ash, Earth gets double baked, like a baked potato. The sphericals arrive. Do you guys know what sphericals are?
No.
I didn't know either before I wrote this script, and now they're in my nightmares. You know all that dirt that was thrown into the upper atmosphere when the impact happened? Well, for the past couple days, it's been encircling the Earth, and it's been condensing into little balls about the size of marbles. All the superheated metal and rock and glass that was melted, it's all been in space condensing into a bunch of marbles. Hundreds of trillions of them. And by orbiting the Earth, they have evenly distributed themselves over the surface of the Earth. And those hundreds of trillions of little marbles, after a few days, start to lose the momentum that put them into orbit, and they start to fall back to Earth. Now, when an asteroid enters the Earth's atmosphere and it vaporizes and burns up, that heat energy is dissipated into the atmosphere. And one little meteor doesn't heat up the Earth all that much. But hundreds of trillions of tiny meteors of very dense metal, which heat up a lot and expel a lot of heat energy, all falling around the same few days, would superheat the Earth again after the ejecta cloud. So these sphericals, these little marble-sized balls, would begin to fall from space a few days after the impact. These spheroids would more or less evenly heat the surface of the Earth below it. It's equivalent to every square kilometer on Earth having its own Hiroshima bomb being exploded within it. That's the amount of radiation energy that was just being baked on the surface of the Earth from all these sphericals falling in the same few days.
That does not sound healthy.
Yeah.
However, this was not the end of life on Earth. If it was, you would not be here today. With the megafauna, which included dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and marine reptiles gone, planet Earth was a dark, cold world, full of tiny creatures. The mammals, a class of animals that had been steadily evolving alongside the dinosaurs, inhabiting the thick undergrowth of Earth's forests throughout the Mesozoic, were the most noticeable in the immediate aftermath. The largest of the mammals throughout the time of the dinosaurs was no larger than a small dog. Amongst the groups that survived were the monotremes, distant ancestors of modern echidnas and the platypus, a now small group of strange egg-laying mammals native to Australia. Early marsupials joined them, preferring the safety of the trees to escape the predators of the forest floor. Somewhere deep within the neotropical forests of the recovering world was the ancestor of all of us, a distant relative to the first true primates. The mammals would go on to truly conquer the swiftly approaching Cenozoic era, diversifying into outlandish new forms. All of the great, opportunistic survivors of Chicxulub laid the foundations for all the mammals we recognize today to evolve, from the largest whale to the tiniest mouse, and ultimately to us. Although non-avian dinosaurs went extinct in the catastrophe, the avian ones, more commonly referred to as birds, did not, or at least not all of them. The enantiornithine birds, a group that was extremely widespread and diverse across the Mesozoic, would go extinct, as would the Hesperornithoforms, a penguin-like group of long-necked diving birds. The first avian dinosaurs to evolve that still exist today were the ratites, gigantic flightless relatives of the ostrich, emu, rhea, cassowary, and kiwi. They were already established by the Cretaceous, but went on to produce the largest birds that would ever live. Following them were the Anseriforms, the group containing ducks and geese, and the Galliforms, which contain modern-day chickens, grouse, and pheasants. Early relatives of flamingos and owls inhabited the neotropical Paleocene forests, bearing an uncanny resemblance to their modern descendants.
That killed almost all the animals on Earth. It extincted the non-avian dinosaurs, and everything that survived was under 10 pounds and very, very lucky. That was number 3. There are 2 impacts bigger than that one. And number 2 is the Vedrefort crater in southern Africa. Now, Chicxulub was 2 million Tsar Bombas. The Vedrefort crater was 13 million Tsar Bombas.
Holy shit.
Yep. It hit the Earth 2 billion years ago, just as life was getting its bearings on Earth. Single-celled organisms have existed for over 1.8 billion years at that point. Organisms were learning this cool new trick called photosynthesis and gaining energy from the sun. And bacteria were learning another new trick, being multicellular and living in groups. And that's what life was like at that time. So there weren't any eyeballs to witness this explosion. There's mostly just bacteria that ended up surviving this explosion. The only thing to really witness this explosion was the rocks and minerals that surrounded it. So why was it so much more powerful? Well, first off, the Vedrefort asteroid was gigantic. Chicxulub was 5 kilometers wide. This one was 25 kilometers wide. This one was also traveling 4,000 kilometers an hour faster, and it hit the Earth at a more direct angle when it hit. The impact would damage the very bedrock of the Earth itself. It's been 2 billion years. The actual impact crater has eroded away over those 2 billion years, but the way that scientists found it is they found a literal dent in the Earth's crust. Like somebody took like a marble and dented the shell of an egg. This is a literal dent in the Earth's crust. Now, the Earth's crust, as I reminded you before, is about 40 kilometers thick. This crater, in its time, would have dipped 30 kilometers down. So it almost reached the mantle when it hit. And when it didn't pierce, it likely cracked and deformed enough that a giant pool of lava erupted in the middle of South Africa. Trees weren't a thing yet, but if they were a thing, every tree within 12,000 kilometers of the impact site would be flattened. A pressure wave capable of shredding rock and steel would reach as far as 8,000 kilometers. And all things within 5,000 kilometers would be engulfed in a superheated plasma, heating the entire area of that 5,000 kilometers to around 3,000 degrees Celsius. Mountain-sized rocks were hurled into the atmosphere by the impact, coming back down hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles away from the initial impact. These caused secondary impacts and tertiary impacts, and fourth and fifth and sixth impacts, leading to effect that led to one entire half of the Earth being bombarded. The sky darkened, and 2 billion years ago there was no plants to wither, no animals to starve, but for thousands of years regardless, the planet was cast into complete darkness. Sphericals, coming in again, doubling the number made by Chicxulub, would fall from space, again double baking the planet and vaporizing the atmosphere. As the shockwave from the impact traveled through the mantle, volcanoes worldwide would erupt preemptively. This may have even caused the non-active ones to erupt with the amount of energy expelled into the Earth's crust. And that is number 2 on my list, the Vedrefort asteroid impact, 2 billion years ago. Unquestionably, if life was bigger than a bacterium at that time, it would have been reduced back to a bacterium.
Would have set us back a fair few years.
Oh yeah, beyond Stone Age, it would take us back to the single cell age. I don't think anything hiding in any hole would be able to survive that.
2 billion years ago, a giant meteorite collided with Earth, releasing enough energy to vaporize solid rock. A site of total devastation. Its effects rippled throughout Africa. But over the course of time, life conquered the barren lands. And today, the crater's past is all but forgotten. This ancient landscape creates a haven for the unique plants and animals of the Vredefort Dome. 185 miles wide and 6 miles deep, the Vredefort crater is an ancient world. Forged when a giant meteorite collided with Earth, it was one of the largest impacts ever to hit our planet. Signs of the impact are now only visible from space. At the very center of the collision is what is known as the Vredefort Dome. Mountains of ancient rock lie in rich, fertile grasslands. Today, the mountains of the Vredefort Dome are the most prominent feature on the landscape. Surrounded by seas of undulating grassland, they hold clues to the crater's past. Rounded granite boulders embedded in a black, glassy obsidian layer are the result of colossal forces exerted during the impact, liquefying rock. These outcrops were once the giant canvas for some of the world's first artists. Ancient engravings left by bushmen who once sheltered here tell of a landscape rich in life. It is thought the Vredefort crater may have played an important role in human evolution. However the crater links to our past, We have been drawn to it for shelter, food, and in the search for wealth. These tunnels were dug by gold prospectors decades ago. When the meteor struck, it fractured rock deep beneath the surface of the Earth, pushing South Africa's gold reserves deep underground. Here, the gold was preserved from erosion, laying the foundation for South Africa to become the world's biggest exporter of the precious metal.
Which raises the question, what could possibly be bigger than that? The Theia proto-Earth impact. This is the leading theory of how the Earth's moon formed. Yeah, feel free to play this, just to give people an idea.
So what we're seeing is what looks like two oranges hitting each other, turning into goo, and then turning into another two oranges.
Now, this isn't a confirmed theory, and remember, a scientific theory is very backed by evidence. It's kind of the graduation point of a scientific idea. So this isn't an official theory yet, but this is a very well-supported hypothesis. This hypothesis attempts to explain why Earth's moon is so unusual compared to other moons. Firstly, it is by far the largest moon in comparison to its planet. I'm not counting Pluto because it's not a planet. But Pluto.
You shut your dirty whore mouth.
It's true.
Pluto is the king of the dwarf planet, and you wanted to make it the smallest, shittiest, not even round planet? Be nice. It's a king.
Yeah.
No. I mean, there's rocks bigger than Pluto in our solar system, and they aren't considered planets. So no, Pluto doesn't get to be a planet. Sorry.
There's a barycenter where where Pluto and its moon Charon spin around each other, and it's not within Pluto. It's outside of it. They both spin around a different spot.
They orbit each other, but the point where they orbit is above the surface of both Charon and Pluto. So.
Yeah.
You guys are so rude.
Yeah, so if we're anti-inclusive considering dwarf planets, the Earth's moon is the largest one in comparison to Earth in all the solar system, which is weird. The composition of its elements is strange too. Most moons have a varied collection of elements, just like most planets that form in regular ways. But the moon's elements and their ratios perfectly match one other medium in the solar system, the Earth's crust. Additionally, the core of the moon is way smaller than it should be. Something the size of the moon, its core should be about 50% of its diameter. But the moon's core is only about 20% of its diameter. Additionally, because of the way that matter was distributed in the early solar system, each planet has unique isotopes only found in the matter of that world. The moon's isotopes, which are unique to every planet, perfectly match the Earth's isotopes. It's almost as if the moon was made from the material scraped off of the Earth's crust, and its core was smaller because it didn't scrape up much core material in an impact. Okay, so maybe the moon formed in a way that a lot of moons form. A planet forms, and then a little moon forms from the leftover debris that was surrounding the planet. If it formed that way, the moon's rotation would be lined up with the plane of the Earth, but it doesn't match up. So it didn't form that way. So what theory is left for the moon's formation? Well, a popular one that possibly explains most questions is the moon impact hypothesis, where a body about the size of Mars collided with Earth, and from the chaos, two new bodies were formed, a new Earth and the moon made from the old Earth's crust. This is the moon impact theory, and here's how it happened. 4.5 billion years ago, a planetoid about the size of Mars, called Theia, named because in Greek mythology Theia was the mother of the moon, and proto-Earth, at that time only 400 million years old, were on a path for collision. Both Theia and Earth had formed on the same gravitational highway lane, pretty much. And because of some rude interactions of gravity, it was probably Jupiter's fault, Theia was sent on a collision course with Earth. So for a few 100 million years, if you were to look backwards, like if Earth is traveling forwards in its orbit, if you were to look backwards, you would see Theia in your rear view mirror slowly approaching and getting closer and closer over a few 100 million years. Eventually, they collided. The 11,000 kilometer thick proto-Earth and the 6,000 kilometer thick Theia collided. Just to give you an idea of how ridiculous the impact strength would have been, the strength of the collision between these two bodies is equivalent to detonating 100 trillion Tsar Bombas.
That's like an unfathomable number.
It's totally unfathomable. I did a bunch of fun math. That is equivalent of having 18,000 Mount Everest worth of nuclear bombs. If you took the entire continent of Australia and you made a giant pile of Tsar Bombas 3,000 feet high across the entire continent of Australia, that would be the equivalent explosive force of this impact. The energy in the collision instantly liquefied entire continents and tectonic plates. In fact, the entire crust of both planets turned into superheated molten rock just seconds after impact. Saying that this impact broke through the mantle would be a drastic understatement. This impact destroyed the entire surface of the Earth down to 2,500 kilometers into the mantle, and the entire planet of Theia was destroyed and absorbed. At these energies, immense solid rock flows as rapidly as water. The impact, when simulated, looks like two balls of molten glass being thrown at each other. The two bodies instantly break apart and reduce themselves into barely spherical blobs as they mix together. It really looks like two blobs of paint were launched at each other. You know, if you spank someone, like their ass jiggles like little ripples? Imagine that across the entire surface of the Earth for years at a time, where the tops of those ripples are 100 kilometers high, and the bottoms of those ripples are 100 kilometers deep.
Earth has been very, very naughty.
Oh, yeah. The biggest spank of all history. No fragment of any continent or ocean or any feature on land would have survived this. Like, beyond animals surviving this, it would be hard for any rock beyond the hardest rocks to survive this. Like, maybe diamonds survived this. This worked out great for the Earth. Proto-Earth, its axis was roughly on level with the Sun, but the impact had tilted the Earth's axis 23.5 degrees, causing Earth to gain fun things like seasons and climates and more active biomes. The Earth absorbing Theia's core also gave Earth a larger than average iron core, responsible for our better than average electromagnetic field that protects us from solar flares. What was ejected from Proto-Earth post-impact over a period of hours, years, or millennia, the theories vary, eventually coalesced into a new spherical body made mostly of the Earth's crust, the new moon. An iron core naturally formed as the planetoid cooled, although since the material came from the crust of the Earth, the amount of iron available was far less than in most planet formations, so it had a smaller than average iron core. The surface of the moon was liquefied for a few million years until all layers of the moon, being made of mostly crust, went cold. The mantle of the new moon solidified, and it settled as the new moon we know today, 3,400 kilometers in diameter.
It's like a baby.
Oh, yeah. Now, let's watch that simulation one more time, just now that you have all that in your heads. Yeah, so imagine this, 4.5 billion years ago, like, this is an impact so significant that you can't really call the Earth before and the Earth after the same planet, because there's too much mixing of the two planets going on.
But when you think about it, like, Theia brought so many things that we need for life.
Oh, yeah.
So the bigger explosions we go, the more life is actually created instead of destroyed. You know?
Well, yeah, like,
we got a lot of things to thank Theia for.
Oh, yeah, and, like, this led to a discussion I was having with the Radio Demon yesterday where we were talking about, like, Theia impacting changed the Earth in a way that made it more hospitable for life. And it's hard to, like, think, like, is there some kind of, I wouldn't say like a god intelligent designer, but is there maybe an alien civilization playing spitball, seeing if they could seed planets properly and terraform? Like, I don't think that the possibility of that happening is low, but it's not zero, you know?
I think we can just blame Jupiter for this one and call it a day.
Yeah.
See, I'm curious what the frequency of these sorts of impacts happen across, in a given region of space. Like, just say our galaxy. How often does an event like that happen?
Oh, like two planetoids colliding?
Yeah, and then it's like, well, if that's what produced the the environment for life to eventually form, is that something that we can expect to happen quite common, or is it something that's such a rarity, which is why we don't know about any other life outside of our own? Like, I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of the point of the Drake equation, right? Is no matter how infinitesimally small the amount of events happening, there are so, not infinitely many, but so many things in the universe that it's going to happen more than one time.
Yeah, like it's a non-zero probability,
Yeah, like it would be more improbable for this to have only ever happened once than it would for it to have happened
again,
thousands,
and
if not
again,
millions
and
of times.
Yeah,
it's just where.
It's just an amazing level of destruction. Like, if you imagine the layers of the Earth like lasagna, this is just taking the whole fucking lasagna and putting it in a blender and making a new ball out of it.
With a smaller lasagna on the side.
I mean, I just thought of something. I'm sure that this has happened more than once, perhaps in our own solar system. Because what is it? Is it Neptune or Uranus? One of them is flipped on its side.
Oh yeah,
damn near 90 degrees.
Yeah, and so it's like, well, I guess it's happened more than once within our own solar system. So I guess out there, it's probably happening all the damn time.
Oh fuck yeah!
But not only this happened so long ago that it was a younger universe, and like everything wasn't coalesced to where it should be in the first place. So I'd say it's much more possible for it to be happening in far distant past than now.
NASA does say that the 97.7 degree tilt of Uranus is likely part of a collision with an Earth-sized object long ago.
Jesus.
So if it happened twice in our own solar system, pretty good chances that it's happening in every solar system.
It could
maybe
happen
the
again.
good Lord just decided that this is the gift he's going to give us, and it only ever happened twice in the history of the universe.
What was the origin story of Mars?
I'm not sure the origin story of Mars.
I know that its moons Phobos and Deimos were captured asteroids.
Yeah. That's why Earth's moon was so mysterious, because they couldn't figure out a way it could have formed, because it didn't look like a captured asteroid. It didn't look like it just formed out of the same plane of material and started orbiting. It looked like it arrived later. I'm not sure of the formation of Mars, but...
These sorts of impacts and these supervolcanoes and these volcanoes, it can happen any time, and there's nothing any of us can do about it. Have a good night, sweet dreams.
Yeah, our entire civilization and species may perish, and we don't have any ability to stop or slow it. I've been Ood Gallifrey.
Dave Murray.
Leon Felger.
Richard Bigley.
The Soundboard Demon.
Don Kessler.
Ellie B.
Yeah, stay out of that smoke. It burns. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Go fetch my toes. I don't have toes, because I'm a demon.